Hey everyone, we are back. And thank you so much. If you are still around, wow, we really appreciate the love for us. Really, it's amazing. So we had to sort out some technical difficulties again. But thank you for being here. You are watching the Multidimensional MD. I'm your host, Dr. Arlene Dijamco. And we're here to help wake up medicine. I have a great guest for you today. As someone I've known my whole life, it's my brother. And we're going to talk about weight loss breakthroughs. And this is episode 11 of the Multidimensional MD. So Jojo, thank you so much for being here and working through all these technical difficulties, even though you're an engineer and watching your sister go through all this. Yeah. It is not a reflection of him. It is all me. So, but I want to, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. We'll go from there.
Oh, okay. So yes, I'm Arlene's brother, and I have actually struggled with weight my whole life, and it kind of came to a bit of a, I guess, rock bottom, you might call it, about 5 years ago when I started having skin rashes and other physical symptoms. And at that point, I was like, that's enough. I have to do something about this. And so, as Arlene mentioned, I'm a software engineer, so I took an engineering problem-solving mindset to it, and really say, okay, what's the first problem that we can solve? Do we understand what's causing it? And so, what's the next steps? That's basically how it began. Although I'll have to admit, at that very first point, I had no idea where to start. And it was then through a conversation I had with Arlene that we began taking some very small initial steps, and the breakthrough started happening one at a time after that.
Yeah, and it's I might do you mind if I pull up the picture?
Yeah, go ahead.
I wonder if I can do that here. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to screen share. Okay, so I'm going to share this, and this is a lot because he's come so far. This is how long ago now? About 3 years ago?
This is about 5 years ago.
Okay. So 5 years ago, and he went to work like this every day. How long did this last?
I don't even remember. I feel like it kind of developed, and then I had it for about a year. So this was close to the worst of it. I couldn't sleep because it actually is painful. It's stinging, and no matter what I put on it, it was sort of better and worse at the same time. And it was only later that I found out why that turned out to be true. So that was part of the unraveling of the mystery, and just how complicated, because it was many factors that were, it was like the perfect storm. It was happening all at the same time, and you had to resolve all the underlying bits, and then it started to get better.
Yeah. So, I mean, initially, was your focus, on losing weight, or was it this rash?
So it was basically this rash. This rash was that was the fire under my feet. I knew I had wanted to lose weight, but I think common experiences, like you go on these weight loss diets and you yo-yo up and down, you regain it. It's hard to keep it off for some reason. And so at least on my mind at that point, I was like, I know I needed to lose weight, but this thing is really, it's ruining my life. I can't sleep. There's all kinds of things that are wrong. I don't feel good. People are asking me what happened to your skin, because it was also down in my neck, a little bit in my arms. It wasn't just on my face. But that was the most concerning part.
Yeah.
How do we deal with this? How do we start?
And I love that line you told me. You said, you don't lose weight to get healthy. You get healthy to lose weight. And I think that's like a really key in terms of a mindset of weight loss. How did you stay motivated? Is this like sheer willpower?
So a little bit of willpower, but I would definitely say willpower is a really unreliable. I think everybody's experienced this. You lose the willpower in that moment where it counts. You eat the cookies, because you just wanted them. And there's these cravings and other kinds of impulses, really, that you have to fight off. At some point, maybe I'm too tired or stressed, the willpower is just going to fail me. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a couple different things, at play here. I knew I needed something that was motivating, and in this case, the skin rash was actually a good start. I really wanted to get rid of this thing, and I would do whatever it takes to get through it. So
Uh-huh.
there's that bit of motivation. But then along the way too, and we can get into this, as we dig in through the topics. There's this idea of arranging your environment so that it's easy to be healthier instead of harder. Like, I don't want to have the cookies right in the middle of the dinner table, or something like that. Like, move things around. Don't buy the stuff. Make it inconvenient to be unhealthy, so to speak. But there's also these ideas of like, you got to be flexible. You got to be easy on yourself. Forgiving of yourself. Really, don't beat yourself down just because that number on the scale isn't moving. Because several times I plateaued and even went backwards.
Yeah.
And it's important to like stay on the program and remember that where you've come from.
Uh-huh. And you really broke it down into like much smaller steps. Because I think that a lot of people see where you are now and they say like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? I couldn't do that. But you didn't really know like what the end, where it was actually going to go. But so I know you described to me how you broke it down into smaller steps. Like what, can you give some examples of those?
Okay, yeah. So the thing that I found, all right, so I started that picture from 5 years ago. I was about 195 pounds. That would put my BMI in the low 30s. So, definitely obese. And I even had a doctor say I was pre-diabetic from a blood test and had fatty liver. I did a dunk tank test and, for body fat measurement, and it said I was at 1/3 fat. I mean, these things all together were kind of like at the beginning at the same time. So, when you take these tests, they say something like, oh, your ideal weight is, and then they give you a number. And at that time, that ideal weight was close to 50 pounds away. And 50 pounds is like, that is a very difficult number to aim at. It just sounds impossible. I've
Yeah.
had difficulty keeping 20 pounds off. How am I supposed to do 50? So I said, you know what? I got here because of just some kind of accumulation over, I don't know, decades. Let me go 3 pounds at a time. Can I lose 3 pounds and keep it off? And what will that take? The kind of mentality I had at that point is that, like, whatever I do to move my weight down 3 points, it's because that there's this idea of a set point in your weight. However it is that you're living your life, your body kind of steadies at whatever weight that is. So I was on the hunt for what is the one thing I can do, maybe two things, I don't know, that will shift my set point weight down 3 pounds, where I can keep it there. And so that's basically what I was looking for. So coming back to the allergy, there was an actual, it was an allergy test that you had me take. It was called ALCAT. And to be honest, it was a test that my insurance wouldn't cover. I had to pay for it out of pocket. So I mean, there's some idea here that a very valuable test, as it turns out, isn't even something that was covered. There's some issues and challenges just with that. But one of the things that it surfaced was that I had some kind of sensitivity to sugar. There was something going on in my body where there was an allergic reaction of a kind, or that's at least what it sounded like. And I couldn't make any sense of it. But the very first thing that I did is like, I'm going to wean myself off sugar. So what was I doing at the time of those pictures? I was drinking several Cokes a day, eating ice cream every day, going for the pastries and the desserts. And there was always, chocolates readily available, and that I was just doing that without any, restraint. I was just freely eating those things. And so I said, let me start with one less Coke a day. Maybe, and then some couple weeks pass. Let's do another, let's take one more Coke away, kind of idea, or ice cream every other day. And these were like doable, so I would still have a couple in order to have the craving satisfied, but then, I would like ease out of it. There came a point where I decided, let me just go for zero. I just want to go for it now, cold turkey. And I suddenly cut sugars down to totally zero. The interesting thing that happened at that point is my rash got seriously worse. It flared like it had never been before. And I was like, something is happening that I do not understand. And I went on, like reading as much as I could to find out what it was.
Yeah.
And this is where things on the web, they were using terms that I wasn't familiar with. It was like detox reaction, candida die-off. I mean, these were the kinds of phrases I came across that, despite all the science and stuff I'd had in the past, I didn't know what that was. And I also didn't have a way to confirm that that's what it was. But the symptoms that these pages described match my life so exactly that I'm like, let me just go with what it is that they say. So when I have this like detox reaction, what is it that I'm supposed to do? And the irony, like page after page, we're saying you need to get back on the sugar. And kind of in a way that's like mind blowing, like what? I actually need to do the opposite of what's supposed to be good for me. And they're like, yeah, because the die off is too hard on your body, you need to back off it and slow it down and wean off in a more gradual manner. So that's what I went with instead. To some extent I felt trapped, but to another extent I'm like, there's a plan. It might feel like, like I can't get away from this thing because I have to put it back in order to prevent, a different problem. But there was a plan to be able to ease off it. And over what I recall being a 9-month, like steady decline, and it went up and down. Sometimes it would flare and I would add more sugar back, and then I would push again, and I would just have to feel it out as I go. How hard can I push? And then I would back off and find that kind of steady place, and then I would ease down.
Yeah,
And I
that's
do
a
remember.
different mentality than just like pushing it.
Yeah, and this was sort of like the beginning of, in my mind, like you have to be flexible, you have to be adaptive, you have to respond to whatever's happening in your body. It's not really my fault. I somehow picked up a thing that's doing this to my body, and I do want to get rid of it, but I have to operate within the biological rules. If the stuff dies too fast, it crushes my body, and I don't want that to happen. So, okay, fine. The adaptation on my part would be to slow it down. And there did come a day where I went for 0 again, and I didn't get that flare up reaction. And I don't know if you can imagine me like just running laps around the building, like going, I'm free. I got away from this thing. And it's that first victory that really placed this idea that you can fight this thing. It might take some patience, persistence, and plateaus
Yeah.
and setbacks, but if you sort of like stay the course, celebrate the victories that you have along the
Uh-huh.
way, and don't worry about the setbacks because your biology is about as fussy as you are, or as I was, I
Which
should
is
say.
really key, like celebrating every little step. I mean, there's a couple things you said. It was like that you were actually being more gentle to your body because it would not like it when you push too hard in terms of the diet. So like you
Yeah.
listen to that, but then also like celebrating like all these things that you gained along the way. So can you tell us like about like some of those just like even surprising bonuses that you gained? It was weight loss, but was so much more than weight loss. Weight loss almost seemed like it was the came along with the getting healthy. So
Yeah. Yeah, so these benefits, I didn't know they were going to happen. And about the celebrating things, there was something I did want to note because it's a little bit different than what
mhm,
most people do. Most people celebrate I got down to a certain weight, like I got
mhm.
down to 170
Yeah.
pounds or something like that for the first time. But in this case, I celebrated the last time that I was above 190 pounds. Like in my mind, I have this like the last time I was above that weight was there was a moment in time that was the absolute last. And that is a moment I want to remember, memorialize.
Uh-huh.
And as long as I stay below that number, I now have a streak that I don't want to break.
And it's something that you
Don't
point out, like focusing on like, okay, the last time, but it was also like, how you felt then too. And like, and when you said the last time, like, I mean, that's kind of an intention and visualization of like, I'm moving forward from this.
Yes, that there is a journey and I have departed, some
Mhm.
previous milestone and I'm on my way to further improvement, but that is a place I'm never going back to. So there is this liberating, it's empowering, it's like I'm doing it. I don't want to break the streak, but at the same time I have to be gentle to myself. So, the nearest last times ever, sometimes I'll regress back through them. But there's some older ones, that are like, those are probably for the rest of my life. I hope to stay. like past that last time ever moment. So that to me, it's like it helps me focus on the positive. And even when I plateau, the streak is alive and well. So that relieves, some frustration over not getting through the next goal, which I feel like I sometimes got stuck in.
Mhm.
But when I remind myself, look how far you've come and how much better your life is, don't give it back. Then I'm like, right. Even if I stay where I am, it's way better than what I was, and there is some kind of that positivity. Really, it rejuvenates kind of like the energy that it takes to keep pushing on, stick with the
Yeah.
program, enjoy life. Those kinds of things.
And can you tell people the benefits that you actually felt and experienced along the way?
The most amazing benefits that I didn't know were going to happen is that I had asthma my entire life, and it disappeared. It didn't happen all at once. It got less and less severe. I was able to lower dosages of medicine, and there came a point where, like, I don't think I need my asthma medicine anymore, and I would get off of it. And what was stunning is that, like, as the weight kept going down, it got even better. Seasonal allergies that would trigger asthma went away. Exercise-induced asthma, cold-induced asthma. These things don't
And
happen
how
anymore.
how long were you on asthma medications?
Oh, 45 years.
Wow.
So it was. I had been told it can't be cured. It's a lifelong, et cetera, et cetera. And now, unexpectedly, I'm experiencing the ability to not even take these medicines anymore. It was similar with the skin rash. I mean, if you see my face
Mhm.
right now,
Yeah.
what I was mentioning about that picture is I was putting on these creams and whatever. I was trying everything. I was trying antibiotic ointments, antifungal ointments, whatever I could find. What I didn't realize until I took that ALCAT blood test is most of these creams contained a chemical that I'm allergic to. And so I was applying the cream and it was partially working, but it was partially aggravating something else at the same time. And that's why it seemed extremely like difficult to be able to treat this thing with other known things. So in combination with reducing the sugar, I had to eliminate use of creams, ointments, et cetera, that contain that particular chemical. And it was that combination that really helped break through the skin rash, and then helped make the sugar that much easier. And I'm imagining that, like, if the sugar and et cetera was doing that to my
Mhm.
skin, it must
Mhm.
have been doing it to my lungs. And that's why I have asthma. So that's one of those, oh my God moments where, like, is that what I've been doing to myself all these decades? So
I so much wish that like not just patients or people in the community, but that physicians are hearing this, and from the ones that maybe we thought that you couldn't get over asthma, you couldn't like heal from allergies, you could like they really kind of threw their hands up. They didn't know what to do with the rash because they had tried so many things, but like this is like yeah, what you said, that aha moment that it wasn't just your skin, it was in your lungs. Like these things were kind of represented each other.
yeah, and so I don't carry an albuterol inhaler anymore. I can confidently exercise and know I won't have an attack. If I get really sick, I can still have more breathing problems than other people do. So it doesn't mean I've escaped it
Yeah.
entirely. But
Mhm.
well, after 40 years of chronic lung damage, something has to be persistent. And well, all right, fine. I'll just learn how to deal with that. But all
Well,
right,
then,
so other benefits that, like, are in there. I know there was like it's like a longer list. I mean,
mhm.
they came at different times. It's sort of as my weight. I think I want to say that as my body fat percentage came down. I don't want to think too hard about the weight coming down. I found out by taking a body scan called DEXA scan that I
Uh-huh.
was also losing muscle. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that
Yeah.
because I'm going to get into this, what people call the skinny fat problem. You're thin, but you're scrawny,
Yeah.
and your metabolic rate is like not good. So I was like, okay, I want to preserve muscle as I lose fat. So I should think of it as losing body fat. But as that body fat percentage came down, a few other things started happening. One of them is that, like, I actually developed some movement problems, pain in my heels,
Mm.
the plantar fasciitis for people that know this, and another pain in my hip. It was very painful. It was called piriformis syndrome. What I discovered from working with a sports chiropractor on this is that it was the way that I was moving that was causing these problems. I had lost enough weight that I could move more vigorously, but I was moving incorrectly. And when we did some analysis for the wrong movement versus the correct movement,
Mhm.
I was like, I don't have this big belly in front of me anymore. So my center of mass is in a different place than it used to be,
Mm.
but I'm still have the habits of moving like it's the old me. And so there was a correction of movement that I had to do through basically sports training. And that resolved both of these problems. And so many people have a very difficult time getting away from them. But even these, I'll tell you, at the worst of it, when I had both of them at the same time, I would get up in the morning out of bed and I could not walk 5 feet to the bathroom because of the pain was that extensive. But then gradually working through like this combination of therapies and sticking to the plan of continuing to reduce body fat, then these kinds of problems resolved as well. That to me was like, I feel like I'm experiencing one liberating moment after another, but this is
Uh-huh.
as long as, you know, I celebrate the things that are in the past and look forward to things in the future and still be easy on myself.
Yeah, and I mean, you experienced like even like other things in terms of like how you could think. I mean, you had gone to Harvard, you like this engineer, but to be able to notice a shift in the clarity of how you can think is still amazing.
Yeah, this is what like folks call the brain fog,
Mhm.
or so my main diet most of this time is the ketogenic diet plus intermittent fasting, and I would kind of change it up based on how I felt. But the main thing that keto people talk about is this reduction in brain fog. Actually, intermittent fasting people talk about it too. And I was like, what is brain fog? But
And
until
just
I,
even reducing sugar, anything to like kind of clean up your gut
yeah,
and get healthier.
yeah, so the experience of the brain fog, so, like, thinking more clearly, part of how it came up is that, like, I understand people's words and I can respond in real time faster. But the real way that I noticed it, and this ties into what motivates me to lose weight, is that my ability to play sports and play music instruments, there's this heightened awareness of what my body's doing. Like whenever I play, let's say like a tennis or something like that, the first bit of awareness that goes is I don't know what my feet are doing. I'm just kind of moving, but I'm unaware of really of where they are. And that's the first bit that goes. And now it's sort of like this, I know what my feet are doing and I can tell them exactly what I want. Or if I'm
Oh,
playing piano, I can see and feel where my fingers are going and I can make micro corrections a lot faster. And so there's these progress on very like fine motor skills was happening much more quickly at an
yeah.
age where people are telling me everything slows down. I'm like, I'm experiencing the exact opposite to that. So that's sort of like that's the my experience of the brain
I love
fog
that.
part
Yeah, just
happening
like
in that
that
form.
lifting. Because I talk about this to people all the time, like being able to be aware of your body. That's the aligning like mind body part. And so being able to be aware of your feet, like head all the way down to your feet, because a lot of people kind of live up here. So they tend to be kind of heady, but like you're walking, but you don't even notice your feet. So that I think is incredible and just like so telling of how much healing was occurring. Um,
Yeah.
I know that, there was something that you had said before. You mentioned that you were obsessing over the number of the scale. I just want to bring this up because this is something that's really common in our culture. It's like a learned response, a learned behavior that people get tied to what the number is, what the size of clothes they're wearing, whatever. Is there? How did you address that?
Okay. So one thing I'll admit is that I never actually got away from this. Yeah, it is kind of an obsession with the number. I never got away from it completely. I actually weigh myself every morning and every evening. I want to know what the high weight and the low weight is every day. And I think about that and I still feel
Mm,
like, oh, it went up. And then I have to catch myself and remind myself that it's really just not about that. But the language is so ingrained in the culture
yeah.
that people talk about like, I want to lose weight, when probably what they mean is I want to lose body fat. Probably,
Yeah.
but the conversation is easier to talk about losing weight. There's an entire industry built around losing weight,
Uh-huh.
and somehow saying the word fat, it kind of feels bad
Right.
just to
Yeah.
utter the word.
I mean, to
So
me, it's
let's
like more, it's like, I want to lose weight, but really it's like, I want to feel confident. I want to feel happy, I want to have energy, I
Yeah.
want to be able to sleep well, whatever it is. There's like so many other things, but they figure the way to do that is to lose weight, but it's like kind of shifting it. It's like actually like feeling healthy, and then the weight kind of
Yeah.
starts to go on its own. But
Yeah,
it
that's
is,
right. So
thanks for being honest about that, because that's something, I mean, a lot of people struggle with. And it is a cultural thing. And, maybe we'll talk about
yeah,
sometime
and
later about how
when
to
you
just
go
like
to
neutralize that.
because when you go to the doctor's office, they check your weight every time. There's a weight chart. They tell you what your BMI is, which is only
Hmm.
about your weight, not about your lean mass versus fat mass. And that's that's not that productive. So kind of coming back to an earlier point, what gets me away from that number, I still use it because it's a tool. It's a
Hmm.
tool for monitoring progress and kind of saying, how did I do this week overall? But it's not the only thing that I pay attention to, and that's really what it comes down to, that it's only one piece of the puzzle, not the entire thing. I care most about like how I feel in life, as you were saying.
Yeah.
Am I doing better in sports? Can I avoid injury? Do I feel energetic? Is the joint pain and muscle pains, do those recover more quickly? Because they do. I've found that one of the benefits is that happens. And it's a bonus that it protects myself against future chronic disease. I think there's a lot of emphasis on that in the
Hmm.
medical community, but it's not something that I feel like I have a sensation of it day to day. Oh,
Hmm.
look, my reduction of stroke just went down X percent. But that doesn't, I mean, at
Hmm.
least day to day, that's not something I enjoy.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
if I can hit that ball more accurately, more powerfully, and play that music more, and move around and feel
Yeah. Okay. So
vigorous.
so what I'm hearing from you is a shift from the number to doing your best to focus on the feeling of like what makes you happy, energetic, able to do the things that you want to do, and just guiding your life in that direction. And you're an engineer, so you took this engineer's perspective, and I know that you had said, well, this is something anyone can do. But I love what you said. You
Yeah.
just started geeking out about the science behind getting healthy and losing weight. What was a major aha moment for you in terms of that physiological
Yeah,
perspective?
so kind of okay. So now, yeah, we are getting into the science, and like I had a lot of science in the past, and I really like it. Some of my work, even in software, was aimed at health and life science for a while too, because I just enjoyed it that much. The biggest aha moment was I saw a video on YouTube that was talking about what it takes to burn fat, and there was this great emphasis on insulin. And despite all any classes I'd taken in the past, I don't recall insulin being that major. But the thing that he did is that he quoted a sentence from a medical physiology textbook that I had studied before. So I'm like, this is a legit source. And he quoted it, and I went and dug it up and found it and started reading the text all the way around it. And the stunning thing here is that, like, if your insulin levels are high, it locks up your fat. It is impossible for you to burn calories from the fat compartment of your body. And
Mhm.
everything is steered toward glucose at that point. And in fact, your body makes every attempt to push excess calories into your fat when that insulin signal is a bit high. So kind of as an engineer, like when I hear this word signal, it's like it like triggers this part of my thinking called signal processing, which is like, this is how computers and so forth work, that when those are signals that are there, what causes the signal? What triggers the signal? How do you control the signal? Are there opposing things that can happen and happen in balance? And that's where it started to direct my attention. But overall, the point here is that, like, it sounds like what I need to do to burn fat is keep that insulin low often. And in order to do that, what does that mean about how I need to eat and how I need to exercise? And then so I'm starting to back into the ideas of like how I should live my life in order to tap in and leverage the biology instead of fighting it. I want to work with the
Mhm.
biology instead of
Mhm.
finding myself insisting on a way that it
That
just
is
doesn't
a
even work that way.
huge part of like integrative, holistic, functional medicine, like working with the body, working with the person instead of against it. So yeah, that piece of like the insulin. And so, okay, so it locks up the fat. And so what does that mean then?
So it goes back to the next question: what causes the insulin to rise? And pretty much, it's very strong. Sugar, blood sugar is what causes insulin to rise. A little bit of the rise is just due to food being present in your gut. When the food lands, the gut detects that there's some food there, and it tells, pancreas, hey, go ahead and start cranking up the insulin. And then as it gets absorbed and the sugar in your blood starts to rise, then that really tells the pancreas to go into high gear. So let's think of it this way. So part of what maybe an engineering mindset brings is, what if I wanted to make my insulin go as high as possible, like make it as bad as possible? Let's maximize fat gain. What would we do? And this is where I started to if I wanted to design a menu around maximum fat gain, what would it look like? It would look like I consume a lot of simple sugars and a lot of fat at the same time, because the sugars will move the insulin very high, which prevents me from burning fat. But now there's also dietary fat. And where does that go? It can only go into the fat, because that high insulin is keeping you from burning fat, period. So I'm like, that sounds like a lot of the food I used to eat, doesn't it? So that would be like the milkshake with a double cheeseburger, or fish and chips with a pint of beer. That's super bad. And so that, it's kind of working backwards from worst case scenarios. Okay, now if I wanted to make it an increment better, what can I do? Well, you can start doing some food swaps, some substitutions, or if you wanted to go, full on, you could just we're looking at a lot of vegetables, fewer starches, definitely no added sugars. The fructose is extra bad because its pathway goes straight to fat. It actually doesn't go to glucose that easily in your body. And I didn't know that, and the table sugar that you have, that's very common in foods, it's half fructose and half glucose. So half of it is, kind of feeding your fat really directly.
So high fructose corn syrup would not be so helpful then, huh?
It's not helpful because that fructose, it has a very roundabout way to getting burned. It first turns into fat, then you have to burn the fat. But if your insulin is high in the meantime, you never access it. It just gets stored. So I'm like, those Cokes that I was drinking, even if it was the so-called Mexican Cokes with the sucrose, it doesn't really matter. Half the sucrose is fructose, and only a little bit more than half of high fructose corn syrup is fructose. So, it was those kinds of the realizations, the aha moments of the science, let's simplify it down. Get rid of the sugars, especially the added sugars. If you have a lot of fat, like I did back in those days, I should even cut fruit and crank up the fiber as much as I can, which means what? Largely a vegetable-based diet.
Yeah.
Not too much meat, and definitely not meat with a lot of carbs. Because there was a boost in the insulin that comes with that.
And I would say any healthy diet that actually works for people tends to be more vegetarian.
Yeah, and part of the point to that too, and it kind of leans into another topic, is that it's hard to get enough nutrients from food if you're not looking for it. So you know what I mean? So part of this problem solving, the natural engineer mindset that I was bringing to it is that okay, now that I'm shifting my diet, I started to notice that if I was low on certain things like potassium or iron or magnesium, those are sort of the top of the list, then my energy felt bad, and I would find myself eating a lot more. And as far as I can tell, I eat a lot more because the foods are so poor in these nutrients. You have to overeat the foods to get enough of these nutrients.
This is such a great point. Okay, so this is when I like to think about with integrative medicine, it's what is your body doing right? Instead of where is it going wrong, what is it doing right? So if you ate a lot of food and you're still hungry, then there's a possibility you didn't get what your body needed. And that's what you're talking about. If you didn't have much nutrition in the big meal that you ate, then you're still going to be hungry. And so that's huge. It's just flipping the paradigm. It's oh, everything in my body is going wrong. It's no, it's actually signaling correctly. It needs these nutrients. And so it's going to tell you to keep eating until you get them.
Yeah. And so there's no specific, it's not like one of the five senses that I'm low in magnesium, but the way that I felt it is that I can't push the intensity of my exercise, going out for a bike ride is less enjoyable. Something's wrong, so I go on a hunt for micronutrients that I might be, slightly low in. And so, all right, where does this take me? As somebody who works with data, I started looking at the nutrient content of food, and I had a focus on things like potassium, iron, magnesium. And I said, if I was to go to the grocery store and buy foods that are rich in these minerals without too many calories, like I viewed calories as a tax that you pay
Mhm.
in order to get the nutrients. So how do I get these nutrients and minimize the calorie tax that I pay? And it's like, I don't know if you ever walk into a grocery store, there's like 50,000 different items that you could buy in a typical American grocery store. And I think I was finding after I was digging through the nutrient data that maybe 100 items in the entire store kind of fit this low calorie tax profile. And they're
Mhm.
all in the produce section.
Yeah.
They're not in any of the aisles in between, certainly not in the freezers, or maybe frozen vegetables, that can work. But otherwise, it's like, yeah, largely plant-based,
Yeah.
grass-fed if it's dairy and meat,
Mhm.
and free range, and if it's wild caught fish, because the omega-3s are deficient in farm-raised fish because they're not fed
Mhm.
the omega-3 foods. I mean, there's those kinds of ideas that start coming to the surface. So it starts to, in some ways, it limits the foods, but it's still 100 different foods that I can
Yeah.
get.
You had three
Uh,
favorite greens that you loved, that you
oh,
try to get all the time.
Oh, yes, and it's because, it's convenient to buy. At the Costco that we have, here near us, there's a bag in the produce fridge called Power Greens, which sounds like kind of a funny
For a
name to
reason.
me,
It's for a
but
reason.
well, I mean, it's like, is it just marketing or what? Why do they call it? I didn't know at the time,
Yeah.
but then when I looked, it's spinach, chard, and kale, and
Love
these
that.
are like at the very top of the list in terms of potassium content per calorie. So in all of Costco, that one bag is the most nutritious like bag as far as that mineral goes, for your body. So pretty much we'll buy it. We buy it every time to make sure there's a regular supply.
And even some years ago, when you started, when your skin had improved, your asthma had improved, like so many things had already improved, you lost all this weight. You had told me that you can now look at the buffet line at work and like kind of know what you need to eat. So there was something that shifted about your cravings and then like how you looked at food. It was like automatically your body kind of like knew like, yes, eat that. That feels good to me. That does not feel good to me. Yeah, can you tell us about that?
Okay, so yeah, that one. Okay, that was something I also didn't know would happen. And when I look back at how it came about, it's actually kind of interesting. When I first started changing my diet, I had heard from like some advice that you need to take a break from the diet periodically. So I went on this like 6 days on the diet and then one day, so-called cheat day where I can
Mm-hmm.
just eat whatever I want. And so at the very beginning, I would find that when I got to that seventh day, that I was actually craving the old bad food like crazy, and I would let myself go ahead and eat it and said, I'll get back to the program, and as long as the long-term trend is okay, then blah, 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 right? But what I noticed after doing this a few times is that, on that cheat day when I was just eating donuts and pastries in the first couple weeks, by the fourth or fifth week, I was like, those things make me feel like bad compared to the 6 days that I'm eating
Mm,
healthier. I started to notice a difference. So the important point there being is that like I experienced a contrast because I had very healthy for 6 days and extremely unhealthy for one day. And in some ways, it was like, ha ha ha, I get to enjoy, have my cake and eat it too. But then past a certain point, I'm like, I'm actually not enjoying the cake anymore. So I started to have less and less, and it started to wean down to a meal. And so because of this contrast, I started to develop this sense of that food makes me feel good. That food doesn't make me feel good. It might taste good, so I have to decide if I want to partake, some
uh-huh.
amount or not. But after a while, it did come to a point where I could walk around like the cafeteria at work and I'd be like, I am drawn toward that particular food for some reason today. And it was like in the mixed green bin, it was just the purple leaves. I wanted just the purple leaves today. And I just started like cherry picking them out, and my entire bowl would be purple. And I don't know why, but it felt great, And I'm like, okay, there must be some nutrient in there where I've developed an intuition about my body needs it. I'm enjoying the food. So it sounds kind of
Uh-huh.
funny, but
Yeah.
I'm like, let's just go with it. Yeah, this is
The
great. It's
purple,
fine.
tons of antioxidants in there. So I mean that's a really neat way to eat. And And what you said, you weren't on any one particular diet. It was like you kind of combined maybe more keto, more intermittent fasting, but also like
Yeah.
mostly vegetarian, maybe vegan diet. And so you listened to your body and started eating like what felt good to you. You ate it when it felt good to you, and kind of started looking at that, how that played into your whole health and weight loss. That's amazing, because I love that idea of like moving away from a diet and more towards like kind of intuitively knowing what you need to eat and really listening to that, because listening to your body is so important. And if you start to interpret those signals as and try to see what it's trying to tell you, then you can kind of speed up your healing. It starts to get more efficient.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Day to day, how it ends up feeling is that if I eat well, I feel good. I feel strong, fast, responsive, alert, and those are the things that matter. If I push the diet too hard, okay, there's times where I did the keto and the fasting a little too hard. I one time that's like 120 hours, right? And I got to
yeah.
about hour 84, and I had to stop because I just felt incredibly bad. I did something, I mismanaged it. I'm not sure what happened, kind of thing. I look back, I have some idea what I did wrong.
Mhm.
But it's that kind of thing where like, I don't push too hard, because like, the idea is to enjoy your life, not to suffer for the sake of some number on a scale. So there is kind of that idea that like, if you optimize or tweak or tune the way that you live your life and you feel better and better every day, you're doing it. That's enough. The
Oh,
scale
that's a
can,
great
bounce
compass
up and down
right
all it
there.
wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To use your life, to
Yeah.
use your body as a compass of like, well, keep going towards what feels good, what really feels good, not just like, oh, wow, I ate this big sugary thing and it tastes delicious, but like more
Yeah.
of a depth of kind of feel good.
Yeah, so like if you like sports, do you do better at your sports? If you do yard work, how about that? If you go on a bike ride, can you conquer that hill that's been killing you? And any other examples of physical activities. If you're able to enjoy them with less pain and more energy, uh, it's going the right direction. And then otherwise, it's like, in a way, you don't really have to worry about what that number says if it's feeling better and better. But what I would say too is that like, if I keep going for more improvements, there are more bonus improvements that continue coming. Sometime in the last 10 pounds of weight loss that I experienced during the pandemic, I had some flexibility in my muscles that suddenly came. I didn't train it. I can
Yeah,
palm the floor. Instead of touching my toes, I can palm the floor. I've never been able to do that. And
that's
it didn't
incredible.
actually I didn't actually work for it either. And I'm like, what happened? And okay, I'll go dig around the science a bit. And it's like, it turns out that when you have fat in your muscle, that fat makes the muscle stiff and weak. But if the fat decreases, it becomes more flexible and actually more powerful. So I'm
Uh-huh.
like, I like that. I like that a lot. I need that for my sports. And so now it's a new motivator to actually continue the journey, press a bit further than the original goal. And well, if I feel bad, I'll stop, because
Yeah.
look at all these milestones I had behind me. Look at all the streaks that are still alive.
Uh-huh. I love to call it,
It's
I was
kind
like,
of
you're like
that idea overall.
the Alton Brown of fitness, because you're taking these kind of dry textbook statements and things and research, and then translating them to like practical knowledge and helpful tidbits. Like it's like you said, there's so much information that's already there. It's how we use it.
Oh,
So,
it's unbelievable actually, because like in the science, it's like, well, I'll get a little like in detail here for a little bit. There's this idea of the hormones like insulin and thyroid hormone and the effects they have on your body, and all of those things have what's called a half-life, which is how long the effects last before half of it wears off. And if you look at these numbers and kind of balance them together, there's some information in
uh-huh.
there for how you should be
Yes,
modulating your nutrition
I'm going to let
in
you
order to
graph
keep
that.
your metabolism up. Oh, yes.
So
I don't have it entirely.
we're gonna this is just a sneak peek, because gosh, we can talk about this for hours.
Yeah.
But I wanted to like kind of introduce people to this way of looking at health and weight loss, focus on the health, taking the sciences. This is integrative medicine. This is not about ignoring science, but it's actually taking all of it and using it. And then also the psychology too, like paying attention to your mindset and your behavior and where your focus is, and breaking down difficult tasks into smaller bite-sized pieces and enjoying every step of it. It's like, I know like some things are very difficult, but just like celebrating all those wins. And because you had so many benefits that you experienced through this like healing, healthy journey, those are a lot of wins. And I mean, you don't want to go back on that.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to lose any of that. And so, and also it's like, I also want to press the journey forward, see how far it goes, but also like tell myself there comes a point where, the body fat percentage doesn't go any lower. It's actually unhealthy, past a certain point, but I don't know until I feel it. I'm not sure how far is too far just yet. But that's where basically I am right now. Like the most recent breakthrough, like
Yeah.
where my Instagram post basically came from was this idea of these like hormones that are in balance that have different half-lives, and what is the timing of like, if I stay keto and fasting strictly, I actually get stuck. If I add carbs periodically, and the question is how much, when, and what kind, then it turns out I can maintain my metabolic rate and then hop back onto keto and fasting for the other part of the time. So now this is the exploration that I'm going through right now. What is the program and how do I feel in terms of like these kinds of adjustments?
Uh-huh.
The flexibility, and I'm being adaptive. I'd like to think I'm adaptive to how my body's feeling and allowing that. And so is this what it feels like to work with my biology
Yeah.
to optimize my health? I think so. And
Uh-huh.
so far so good, and
Yeah.
as the journey
Adapting,
continues.
not getting stuck in any one mindset, because like there's so many people get stuck in so many different diets, and but what you've been doing is just like really listening and listening if you got stuck, like shifting it, adapting, being flexible.
Yeah.
So this
Yes.
is a large part of what we're being asked to do today anyway, is like
Yeah.
adapt.
So I don't want to just like, some people say, so are you doing keto? I'm like, well, yes and no. And then they're like confused. And I'm like, well, there's this adaptive side of it. And then, oh, I guess that kind of makes sense. But so you do cheat days. I'm like, well, I don't want to put it that way. It's more like I'm operating within, like, if you do keto and fasting on a calorie deficit for a long time, your metabolism will slow to a point that you can't win. So
Well,
you got to do something else to like.
I think the thing is that because you said like a cheat day sounds like it's something that's not good for you, but more of
Right.
adaptive diet is more like you're listening and you're shifting it to what's actually going to be for your best progress.
Yeah. So what keto and fitness people will often say instead is a refeed day, and
Mhm.
but they don't really explain like what is refeeding and why is that helpful. But people just go, okay, it's my refeed day and I feel better. And so for most people, that's actually plenty. The science behind it I find fascinating, and at least to me, it gives me a way to problem solve and tweak
Uh-huh.
and feel like, okay, I'm operating within an understanding, and that's why it's kind of okay to. I mean, it's kind of like learning food science instead of learning recipes. I can
Mhm.
modify any recipe to my liking and still know I'm going to get a good result. So I can modify the diet and activity, like for a particular day or week, and still know I'm going to get a good result because it's backed by some scientific idea.
Mhm. Well, this has been so great. I hope that people found this helpful. I mean, I loved like being able to talk to you and just hash this out some more. And gosh, we have so much more we could talk about. But we're kind of coming up on time here. And thank you so much, Jojo, for being here.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be so helpful for people. So thanks for watching. This is Dr. Arlene Dijamco, the multidimensional MD, and I've been talking to my brother, Jojo Dijamco, here the whole time about weight loss breakthroughs and getting healthier. So thank you. Lots of love to everyone.